Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to the fifth presentation of the Metro Atlanta chapter of the AMS and NWA's Fall Webinar Series. My name is Sid King, and I'm the current president of our local chapter for the year of 2020. If this is your first time joining us, over the summer, our chapter launched its first ever virtual series to encourage the sharing of scientific knowledge and create educational resources that are free for everyone to use. And it's our privilege to be doing it again this fall following the same principles. Here's the list of our speakers for the fall series. We had a great presentation by Dr. Knox at UGA last week, and we're nearing the end of the series for the season. We have 2 more talks set for the remainder of the series, including the one today. For anyone that would like to see any of the previous webinars you may have missed, or would be interested in learning more about, the recordings have been uploaded to the Metro Atlanta AMS NWA YouTube channel. It's my pleasure to introduce today's guest speaker, Dr. DaNa Carlis. Dr. Carlis is an award-winning meteorologist that recently became the Deputy Director for the NOAA OAR Global Systems Laboratory, where he is responsible for leading research and development efforts in the laboratory. Through his career, he has worked in various roles between science, policy, management, and leadership, and is going to speak to those elements in today's presentation. If you have any questions, please feel free to type them in the chat window, and we can address them at the conclusion of the talk.
All right. Thanks, Sid, for the introduction. I'm really excited to be here speaking at the Metro Atlanta AMS NWA chapter meeting. It's a fantastic seminar series. I've done some of these seminar series in my time at NOAA, so I know how hard it is to get people to come speak, and also hopefully get people to attend some of these meetings because we're all so busy. But I really am interested in kind of sharing kind of my story, sharing kind of my journey with respect to how I kind of started in science, how I got interested in science. How I kind of fell into policy, and also kind of how, leadership has really kind of helped me, move my career forward over the last, I would say, probably 6 to 7 years. And so I'll talk about all aspects of it. And so it'll be kind of interspersed in between. And I know I only have about 30 minutes to talk, but I really just want to kind of share my journey and share a little bit of science as well. All right. So we'll start off with my journey. I grew up in Tulsa, Oklahoma. I was one of 7 kids. My mom had 3. My dad had a total of 7. But growing up in Tulsa, Oklahoma, I had really influential people that kind of helped me along the way. I knew that science was something that interested me. I was really good at science growing up, and it really wasn't something that I knew exactly what a career in science would look like, because I only really had one scientists that I truly knew outside of my teachers that were scientists in the courses that I took at Booker T. Washington High School in Tulsa, Oklahoma. But the one scientist that I had that knew about science, he would talk so glowingly about, being a chemist and being a researcher and doing experiments. And it just made me kind of fall in love with the idea of being a scientist. His name was Dr. Gary Davis. And he spoke so glowingly about it. And he was a medical doctor, one of the few African-American medical doctors in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And I just happened to be friends with his son. So I owe a lot in terms of wanting to be a scientist to Dr. Davis. And so, I talked a little bit about the mentoring aspect and that being important. And when I was 16, I had a opportunity to meet a young man that was an alumni of my high school, but he was also an alumni of Howard University. I had never heard of Howard University before until I met this young man who is still my mentor today. And his name is Anthony Marshall, and he basically told me all about Howard University, invited me and five of my high school age friends to visit Howard University, and I visited the university and absolutely fell in love with it. And when I got to Howard University a year later, it was one of the few schools that I actually applied to that I decided that I wanted to major in biology because I wanted to be a medical doctor like Dr. Davis, and determined that biology really wasn't in my future, and I enjoyed problem solving a lot more. So chemistry really became my passion because I took bio and chemistry at the same time my freshman year at Howard. And so chemistry became, my passion. And eventually, being part of the chemistry department, I would run into different chemistry professors. And one of those professors was Dr. Vernon Morris, who was both a chemistry professor, but he was also an atmospheric chemistry professor. And he introduced me, and as well as other students at Howard, to NOAA, and introduced us to atmospheric chemistry and atmospheric science and meteorology and numerical weather prediction. And so, having that opportunity to engage with another mentor at Howard really introduced me to NOAA. And at some point, I decided that I wanted to continue on after getting my bachelor's degree in chemistry. I know I needed to set myself apart and continue to pursue higher education. And so I decided to, of course, go and get my master's degree. And that master's degree was at Howard University. All of my degrees come from Howard. And the degree was in atmospheric chemistry, atmospheric science. And I got introduced to NOAA through that particular program. I got an opportunity to apply to a program called the NOAA Educational Partnership Program for minority serving institutions. And that particular, being accepted into that program actually allowed me to conduct research in Honolulu, Hawaii, where I worked at the Pacific Region headquarters, and I also worked at the Honolulu Forecast Office developing numerical weather prediction models. And so I moved from DC to Hawaii, and once I was finished with my PhD in atmospheric science from Howard, I decided to go back. My wife and I decided to go back to DC, where I actually became a research meteorologist at the National Weather Service, working at the Environmental Modeling Center for 7 years. So developing those technical skills that you need and those analytical skills that you need to really, solve today's issues, to make forecasts better, all of those kind of things. And so that time in Washington, D.C., I spent from 2007 pretty much until 2020. So I had multiple jobs. I was the policy advisor to the NOAA chief scientist. I was the policy advisor to the NOAA deputy administrator. I was the weather portfolio advisor for NOAA research. That's when I actually decided to go from National Weather Service over to OAR, to the research arm. I became a program manager within OAR as well, within the weather program office. And so I had multiple programs under me where I probably managed somewhere around $14 to $15 million in budget over that 2.5 year period. And just recently, I became the deputy director at the Global Systems Laboratory. And so now I live in Boulder, Colorado, and work with a fantastic team and a great laboratory here of scientists that are doing amazing work in terms of advancing technologies and meteorology and numerical weather prediction from the short range all the way out to the subseasonal systems. And so I want to just to introduce myself that way, but also, just give folks an opportunity to know about like the 4 key areas for me in terms of my career development. I had to be one that was highly supported. I needed like guidance. I needed people to mentor me. Without the mentors that I've had in my life, I definitely wouldn't be where I am today. So That picture is me on my wedding day with my wife and also President Bill Clinton there in that particular photo. The next one really is about opportunity. I think growing up, I always sought opportunities, but I think it's important that we as individual folks, we also go out and seek those opportunities ourselves, and that we have mentors that provide opportunities for us as well. And so people that provided opportunities for me to join NOAA and introduced me to NOAA, because I didn't know really much about NOAA until I was in college. And so that's me the day that I joined NOAA back in 2002 with the Educational Partnership Program. And then inspiration. I think inspiration for young people is extremely important. I think representation is extremely important. I think that having people that you aspire to emulate or be like it's really helpful in terms of you being able to see yourself in different positions. I never really truly saw myself as a scientist growing up until someone that looked like me told me, hey, you should think about being a scientist. You're good at math and science, so think about those things. And then action. I think the one thing people definitely kind of know me for is being a person of action. If I say I'm gonna get something done, I'm gonna get it done, and I'm gonna figure out a way to get it done, whether it's just me doing it solo or it's me working with someone else to do it. And that's a picture of me on the NOAA G4 dropping instruments, dropsondes over the ocean on a reconnaissance mission back in 2006. That was over the Pacific Ocean. So what does a research meteorologist do, right? I think there's plenty of meteorologists probably on the phone right now, on Zoom call right now. Most people think that you look at the sky. Your friends probably think that you chase hurricanes and tornadoes. Your grandmother probably thinks that you actually study meteors. And a lot of people probably think that you are on television. That's probably one of the first questions that I get was, what channel am I on? But what I actually do really as a research meteorologist or a numerical weather prediction developer, model developer, is write code. You sit at a computer, just like we're all doing right now, and you write programs in different programming languages, and you do a lot of mathematical equations as well. And so you do that in different programming languages like Fortran, C++, Unix, Python is probably the latest. From 2007 to 2014, I worked at the Environmental Modeling Center. We worked on codes in graphics like this. We did evaluations of different modeling systems, whether it be a hurricane model, whether it be a global model, whether it be a regional system. And we did all of these different analysis and verification in order to provide products and services to the public. The thing that was really important in that particular role is that you really have to be good at writing. You have to be good at oral communication, because you're going to be asked to get up and present at an AMS or an NWA and share, what your research results are. And you are, as a meteorologist at EMC, you're sharing really what's the next product that's coming to the forecast office or to the National Hurricane Center, all of the different entities that are out there. And EMC's products, they're those models that we develop at EMC and in our laboratories within NOAA. All of those go out to the public, and you use them for scientific collaboration. You use them for some of your different reforecast studies, basically, in the work that you do, in the papers that you publish. So you use a lot of the data that we provide within NOAA and the model data that we provide within NOAA to conduct research out in the community. And the last thing you really need to be is really good at managing projects and managing yourself. And I'm gonna talk a little bit and introduce you to the concept of project management, because it was introduced to me when I decided to be a program manager. And so apply. I talked about mentorship. I remember when I kind of shifted kind of in my career in 2014 and decided, well, someone else told me, hey, DaNa, you need to be thinking about management and leadership. And well, I said to myself, well, I'm not really prepared for management and leadership. I haven't been trained in management and leadership. So I need to figure out where to go to get some training in management and leadership. And so the great thing about NOAA is that there's all of these different programs out there. And great thing about any kind of government agency, there's different programs out there that you can apply to that can help you to advance your career. And the NOAA Leadership Competencies Development Program, which I joined in July of 2014, for basically almost 2 years of my life, I spent on detail, working in different offices. I told you I worked for the chief scientist of NOAA. I worked for the NOAA deputy administrator, doing strategic planning and policy work. Had I had any of that experience before? No, not at all. But the thing about it is as scientists, you are an analytical thinker. You have the ability to problem solve, and you're used to reading pretty much everything in front of you, so you can figure things out. And so I go and I work for NOAA Leadership, being coming from being a research meteorologist, where I'm just really sitting at my computer coding. And so what a great experience that was and has been for me, that really kind of helped me propel my career to where I am today. And so these are some of the people that were part of my cohort. All of them are great friends of mine, spending 2 years together, kind of learning about leadership and learning what it means to be a leader, and what's my leadership style, what's my personality traits. All of those different things are things that you really need to know in order to be an effective manager and leader of men and women as you continue throughout your career. And so I talked a little bit about the fact that I was able to get into policy, and I moved over into program management after LCDP. And so, when you are in policy, you get a chance to work on a bigger, broader scope. You're not just focused on the weather. You're focused on you could be focused on satellites. You can be focused on fisheries. You can be focused on ocean research and what's going on in terms of policy with respect to ocean. So when you kind of go into policy, and we need more scientists to go into policy. Our current, I think it was the 116th Congress, really only had 11 professionals that are policymakers or Congress people, basically, that had STEM degrees. That's not a good number, right? We need more folks that with science degrees going into Congress. And so when you think about it, you're developing strategy. You're setting the vision for an organization. You're seeing what policies Congress is developing, and what's kind of the latest and greatest in terms of policy that needs to basically be developed. And so one of the things that I worked on during my time working with the chief scientist was I worked on a prospectus for cooperative institutes. And cooperative institutes are organizations and cooperative agreements that we have with universities all across the country. So we have cooperative agreements with, OU, with CU Boulder, just different organizations, Princeton. And so that's the policy. And then I've moved on into program management. After the Obama administration left, I had to figure out what exactly I was going to do next. And the thing that I wanted to do next was go into program management. So I had to figure out how to be a program manager. So I went and took courses to get my PMP, Project Management Professional certification. And I'll talk a little bit about that before I end. So that's kind of been my policy and program management and some science experience. And so let's go a little bit back into the science again, where Earth system modeling is really a priority for the agency, for NOAA. If you look at this particular graphic, this is the suite of operational numerical guidance systems that the National Weather Service produces each and every day. So on the y-axis, you have warnings, watches, forecasts, threats, guidance, outlooks. And on the x-axis, you have pretty much the benefits to the public, which is life and property, aviation, maritime, space weather, fire weather, all of these different benefits that our products basically serve to the public. And then in the blue, in these areas here, you have the blue areas here, you have, the climate forecast system, you have the global ensemble forecast system, you have GFS, you have the national water model. These are all of the different modeling systems that are developed, that are run in operations. And if you were to count these up, it's probably just on this screen, it's probably close to 20 different systems. And those systems basically run from minutes to hours to days, all the way out to seasons to years. So just think about how difficult and complex this system is that we're running today. Now, I want to talk a little bit about where we are trying to go. We are really trying to move towards a more unified forecast system and to modernize our operational production suite that we run at the National Weather Service. And so we are moving towards a system called the Unified Forecast System. It's a community developed system. And I'll talk a little bit about community in a second, but it's a community developed Earth modeling system. It's designed to be both a research tool and the basis for NOAA's operational applications. So researchers at universities, we want you to be using this particular system. We're going to figure out a way to train you in using it, and we want you to partner with the UFS community to develop it. And that the UFS will basically span all of the different timescales that I just talked about in the previous graphic. It'll be a local system, a regional system, a global system. It'll be a subseasonal, and it'll be a yearly seasonal system as well. It'll have applications that work for weather, for hurricane, for space weather, for marine and coastal and air quality and flood and hydrological. But the difference is that this is, if you count these boxes up here, this is more something more like 8 systems rather than the 20 that you saw on the other slide. And so this is where we're trying to go. But we as in NOAA, as in the UFS community, want to work with the public to get there, with scientific researchers to get there. So how are we going to do that? What is this going to look like, DaNa? So you as a researcher, you are out there at your university, or you are sitting at a forecast office, you have you're interested in numerical weather prediction, you're interested in subseasonal forecasting and predicting on timescales that are longer than the weather timescale, or you may just be interested in, high resolution regional forecasts. You are a scientist, you're an engineer, you're a graduate student or undergraduate student. You're at one of these NOAA laboratories, or you're at the DOD, you're at NCAR, all of these different places. You are the community. Now, what happens next? There is research that you are interested in doing. The question is what tool are you going to use for that research? We hope you're going to use the UFS. The UFS is on GitHub. It's free and open for you to be a part of that community, to add your code there. The question is where will you run it? Hopefully you'll run it either on the cloud, or you'll run it on, and when I say the cloud, I'm talking about Amazon Web Services. I'm talking about Microsoft Azure. I'm talking about Google Cloud as well. So you should be, at some point, you'll be able to run the UFS on those systems. But you can also run it on your R&D, hard iron, high performance computing systems as well. And if you have a small cluster at your university, you should be able to run it there as well. Now, the question is what innovation are you actually adding to the UFS? Now, you may be doing data assimilation or coupling or ocean modeling, and there will be, a process to get your innovation into the repository that is GitHub, basically, right? And the question is once you get into that repository and you go through all of that screening and your code meets the standards, now that code is available to the National Weather Service, to the National Centers for Environmental Prediction, NCEP. And we can run that code on our supercomputer called WCOS. And that's what the idea behind moving towards the UFS actually is. We want to engage the community in model development. So next slide, I want to talk a little bit about the project management piece and move away from the science, because project management is something that I think we all do on a daily basis as researchers, as really workers in the industry that we're in. But the thing about project management is that it actually gives a name and a process to the work that we do on a daily basis. Every project that we have, to me, it starts. You have to initiate the project. You gotta monitor and control the project, and then you gotta close out the project. You gotta run through all of these different steps. And Project Management Institute and the PMP just gives names to all of that. And so back in 1997, there were over 31,000 total members that had and 6,000 active certifications in 96 countries. If you look towards 2016, that number has basically gone up by a factor of 8, 9 to almost 500,000 and over 795,000 active certifications. So I say this because I really want you all we're to think about the way that we do our work and the processes that we use in order to do our work. And we have to be continual learners, really, in order for us to continue to advance and continue to grow as scientists and individuals, basically. So the next thing that I wanted to kind of share with you guys is, hold on a second here. All right. Is kind of some of my most important skills and competencies for career development. I think people skills are extremely important. And these are just some of the things that I've learned over my 18-year career so far. Being able to relate to people and have conversations, whether it's good or bad conversations, positive or negative. You got to be able to go in there, have the conversation, and be able to move forward with that person, whether they're a colleague of yours or whether they are a subordinate or they work for you or something like that. I think leadership is extremely important. And like I said earlier in the talk, I didn't really get into understanding what leadership actually truly means until people kind of encouraged me to start to think about moving into management and leadership. And having those leadership skills are extremely valuable because in our society today, it's really difficult to do things alone. And so you have to use your skills of persuasion, of negotiation, of course, just leadership in general, in order to get things done in the environment in which we work today. I think one of the lost skills of people is listening, the ability to sit back and not respond and take in information without really necessarily responding with your own opinion is a lost art that we really need to continue to develop. Because people have ideas, they just need somebody to listen to their ideas. And so integrity, ethical behavior, consistent follow through and action. Remember, I said action in the beginning is really important. You don't want to be the person that's giving a particular activity and be known for inconsistently following through on the work that you do. So I encourage you to always really work in an active way and have strong ethical and high follow through on the work that you do. In terms of building trust is extremely important. We don't work in silos anymore, so you have to be good at the people skills, but also at the trust building skills as well. Verbal communication, we all know that that's important. The more that we put information out, our modeling data, our observations, all of those things, we need to be able to communicate them at a level where people understand. Scientific communication is an extremely important skill to develop. And then, building strong teams, of course, always really important. Of course, you're going to work with other people. How do you work with other people? How do you build those teams, especially if you're in a leadership position? How do you get those folks that are working with you and for you to move in the same direction that you're trying to move? And then conflict resolution, conflict management. Conflict is always going to be part of the work environment. And so we have to be able to be prepared for it and be able to manage those conflicts. The technical capacity, I think as scientists, we have really strong technical capacity. We have an ability to think critically. We have an ability to solve different problems, whether it be mathematical or scientific problems. We have to continually use those skills to move the world forward in some sense. And then how do you balance your priorities? At certain times in different parts of your career, you're going to go through different seasons and you're going to be asked to do things. And you need to understand that no is a full sentence. Sometimes you have to say no to things. You typically don't try to say no to many opportunities, but I think in some sense, depending on where you are and what's the priority right now, you have to have a good balance of what's most important in your kind of work environment, in your workspace at that particular moment. And so those are kind of my top 10 skills that I think I've tried to develop over my career that I think are really important to others. And so I'll just end with asking for any questions. And this is a picture of my wife and my daughter and the mentoring program that I'm president of. It's called the Seed of a Nation Ministry. It's in Washington, D.C. Although I'm in Boulder, Colorado, I'm still the president. And, like I told you guys earlier in the start, mentoring has been such a big part of my career. I felt it robbery if I did not give back to people that needed support, and young men, especially young men from underrepresented backgrounds, need our support. I'm probably one of the only scientists that they know, and I'm hoping to inspire them to be a scientist one day. So I want to thank you for taking the time to listen to my talk, and hopefully you have a few questions for me.
This is Marcus Williams. I'm a research meteorologist for the United States Forest Service. I don't know if you can hear me.
Loud and clear.
Well, I have a question for DaNa. Kind of not really on the topic of what your discussion, but one of the things I kind of feel that's important and it doesn't get talked about a lot. What are some of the things you do to maintain a proper work-life balance? And how do you stress that message to the people that you lead?
Yeah, thanks, Marcus, for that question. That's an excellent question. I think for me, one of the things that I've kind of learned about myself is that if it's not on my calendar, then the likelihood of me doing it is really tough. And so, I schedule date nights with my wife. I schedule, anything that is important to me is on my calendar. And so whatever is important to you, whether it's, mentoring students, it needs to, you in order to prioritize it, you got to make it part of your weekly schedule. And so I'm a big calendar person, and I think that's one of the things I actually learned from my wife. And so we schedule everything, and we do our best to stick to those schedules. But of course, in COVID, everything is kind of up for grabs right now. But in terms of the people that either work for me or that I support, I really encourage people to, it can wait till tomorrow. Basically, is another kind of thing that kind of happens as well. That whatever you're doing, if your family comes in and you need to get something done with your family, go get it done. You don't need to work 12 and 13 hours a day unless you just are really trying to meet a strict deadline that you have to meet. But you got to figure out a way as you kind of work and you kind of develop yourself is to develop those priorities and try to live a balanced lifestyle and not work 60 hours a week.